and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. We are back on a Monday night, same time, same crew, having a lot of fun. All of us over here. If you guys, we should do a behind the scenes documentary and just show what
God,
happened
no.
before or after the show. And honestly, all you guys would need to see, you don't even have to be on there with Gally. We only need Bickler and his background and what happens in behind that black wall. You guys don't want to know because we definitely get access to it.
Tight fit. It's tight fit. That's the answer. It's a tight fit. And if he moves too quickly, that wall comes down. Like the wall came down in Berlin, and the wall fell just as hard a little earlier tonight during the pre-production meeting. And by pre-production meeting, people, I mean we shot the shit and really just kind of bantered just slightly less than normal.
You should excuse the street-looking people in the background. Those are my kids.
Basically, ultimately, the short version of the story is Bickler ran out of beer, so he decided to just go through the wall instead of around it to access the refrigerator. and chaos ensued.
Oh, God.
Welcome to everyone to the Monday Night Podcast. I am your host, as always, Tim Wichin here in Chicago. Feels like it's Halloween out there, like weather-wise. All the snow is gone and everything like that. It's crazy, but it has been an awesome weekend. Well, for me, especially like yesterday, Liverpool, Fenerbahce, then top it off with a stressful 49ers win. And we are back here. Gally, you had no horse in the race yesterday for the most part. How are you holding up?
I held up fine because I didn't really have anything to do except for root for my picks and sheets, and they didn't work out that well either. But once Buffalo was out of things, I didn't have to pretend like I was actually caring about anything else for my in-laws and or my wife. So it was just watching Baltimore do what they do, which is come up short and see the Kansas City Swifts make their way to the Super Bowl. And then I knew it was the Battle of the Monday Night Podcast. We watched it in our house, actually, and Kelly asked multiple times, like, how do you think it's going for both of them? And I'm like, Timuchin's a little nervous, won't talk in Discord. Bickler is completely MIA. He might be in a witness protection program. And basically, at any moment, I think Kelly was mostly worried about where Bickler was as it went. Because at one point, she thought he might be hitting an all-time high. And by the end, she knew they were taking belts and shoelaces. And, well, at least they didn't take his picture first, so there's a first for everything.
Yeah, it was definitely a stressful watch. I mean, yeah, initially I was on, then I was like, yes, I got to focus. And then I was too miserable to comment or anything anyway. And then I don't know if you guys have stupid superstitions like I do, but I was sitting in a certain position and I swore I could not even freaking move because I'm like, hey, we're coming back over here, so I should not move. And I don't think I moved till like there were 2 minutes to go. Dogs were excited. They were like, who scored? Is it a goal? Liverpool leading? What's going on? But they did. They were rewarded with some snacks. Bickler, what's happening? How are you holding up?
I have just never felt so loved in my entire life. The amount of people I've had do like buddy checks on me and stuff in the last 48 hours has been unreal. Like my really good friend just messaged me in the middle of the third quarter in the game, and he's like, he's a big football dude, diehard Giants fan, but huge like football analytics guy. He's like a total football freak. And he just texts me. It's bad when he just texts you in the middle of the third quarter. He goes, hey. And then the next message is, let's get a cabin in Montana and never talk about football again. But a lot of people got on this bandwagon because I think they think Detroit specializes in losing. Well, folks, they specialize in heartbreak. That's what they do. And so, like, that is what Detroit does. They specialize in heartbreak. So in true Detroit fashion, they stayed completely true to their roots. And in some really fucking weird, traumatic childhood way, like losing that game stung so good because it just reminded me of disappointment as a child, whether it's losing to the Redskins in the playoffs, whether it's Barry Sanders walking out in the prime of his career in your life, whether it's finally forgetting that and having Kelvin Johnson walk out in the prime of his career in your life. So, this one, it was a good hurt. Hat tip to the Niners. You can't give a team that good opportunities, and that's what they did. took the foot off the gas, forgot what they were good at, made some questionable calls, didn't execute. You can't do all those things collectively against a good team, or you're going to get beat.
Michael says some Lions fans bought Super Bowl tickets at half. That was the jinx. Really?
Detroit. They're going to try. Those are just people trying to resell those tickets anyway. It's Detroit. You can't take the hustle out of Detroit. What happened
First of all,
anyway?
I want to make a statement. If those people bought those tickets, they're worth more today than they were yesterday. So
honestly,
they made a good decision. Jinx or not, people. Okay. I wish I had bought some Liverpool tickets for the last match of the season on Thursday freaking afternoon, because they'd be worth a lot more.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad investment at all, but it's quite an expensive investment from what I heard. But speaking of heartbreak, we didn't get a chance to, obviously, we've been talking about it all week. The boys had like a great show actually on Friday Night Live, and then we talked about it Friday morning as well, but haven't got a chance to talk about it with you guys in terms of Klopp's announcements and leaving and stuff like that. So, I mean, we have a lot to talk about in terms of the game yesterday, and then we have 2 huge games coming up, but obviously it's not a topic we can ignore. So we'll go probably over time in terms of like what we liked about this era and what we want to see coming up and stuff. But I mainly kind of wanted to get your guys' reaction to it. Bickler, let's start with you on this one. Wait. Kids, you guys thought I forgot. And to be fair, I did. But now it's back, bitches. Did not forget about
I was like, wow, this acting's really improved.
I've been taking lessons. No, I did actually initially forget, but BJ sends in these trivia questions. You don't want to let it go to waste, especially and the audience. You got to give the audience what it wants, people. Okay. Obviously, it is going to be Klopp related. How many matches did it take for Jurgen Klopp to get his first win in all competitions as a Liverpool manager, and against which club? Ding, 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 ding. Bickler.
I need you to repeat that question.
Oh my God. Here we go. How many matches did it take for Klopp to win his first game as a Liverpool manager, and who was that match against? Like, I reworded it.
Okay.
Layman terms.
God, I don't remember this. 3 matches in the team was Norwich. I don't know.
Galley?
I was also going to say 3, but I'll switch it up just to not say the same thing as Bickler, because that usually means I won't be right.
I want to be right.
Tell me you're wrong without telling me you're wrong.
Yeah. I agree with Bickler. I'm going to go with 4. I'm going to go with 4, and I'm going to say the first win was against Watford.
The answer is 4. So partial credits of the winnings goes to Galley over here. It was against Bournemouth, a 1-0 win in the League Cup, actually.
I almost said it, but then I was like, wait, we lost to Bournemouth almost every time we played them at the beginning of that Klopp era. So it felt like it probably wasn't. But it was the League Cup, right? Because they lost, and I think they drew the first match with Spurs, right? Was it 1-1? They drew the first match, or 0-0?
I only know as much as BJ tells me, man. So
I remember the first match was against Spurs. And if you see the lineup, it's the most ridiculous thing you'd ever see in your whole life. Like, it's like the lineup he put out there for the first match is so ridiculous. And it's exemplified by the fact that Divock Origi is in it. Like, that lets you know what he started with. What he almost ended with.
The funny thing is, I'm totally off topic now, but I did see, what we would probably consider, and like I say, we can probably do like 10 shows on Klopp and the Klopp era and stuff, but, what we would probably consider a Klopp starting 11. And I saw somewhere, and I don't know if there is truth to it, should get BJ to do the research for it for us, but that lineup had only played together actually once. And it was the quintessential Klopp lineup, Trent, Robo, I think it was Matip, Van Dijk, Alisson, Wijnaldum, I want to say, Fabinho, Henderson, and then the top 3, the and I was shocked that it said in the stats, and I saw this on quite a few places, that lineup actually started as a starting lineup 11. 0-0 Tottenham is confirmed, first of the 3 draws. So let's get back to it. Now that we all enjoy trivia and piled on Bickler's misery with more misery, let's go to the Klopp misery. How did you take the news? Obviously, the shock goes without saying, but what are your initial thoughts?
I guess just one of just profound sadness. You know what I mean? It feels like I don't ever like to compare death here, but it feels like when you lose a really, really good friend, like when they say goodbye and either you're not going to see him again, or I don't know. It felt like loss. Like overall, it just felt like loss. And I think what really makes Jurgen unique is we can talk about what shape he left the club in, the improvements he's made, the trophies he's won. The fact that Liverpool is back as an elite club on the international front in club soccer or club football. But I think what he really brought, in my opinion, was this sense of community back into Liverpool football in a way that is so core to the fabric of that club. And in a way that you see in grassroots football that you don't often see in modern football anymore. And I think when I think about the loss of Jurgen Klopp, I think tactics can be evolved. You can bring world-class tactics back to the club. You can bring a manager who can acquire world-class talent. You can bring scouting. You can bring directors of footballs. You can bring brilliant minds into the building with analytics, and you can replicate those things. But it's really hard to replicate the type of leadership that he brings in the way that he makes players play for each other in modern football, in a way that he makes players play for a city in modern football. I don't think those things can be easily replicated.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Brian says, the unique thing about Jurgen was he got us. And yeah, it's no one could be a better fit, which obviously is the problem that we will have moving forward. But how about you, Gally?
Yeah, I mean, it was an emotional morning, right? When I heard about it, I was like, no. I genuinely, I think there were a few people, whoever shared it in our Discord channel, it was almost like the joke, you're not getting me to click on that. This is one of those things guys send out in a big group text, and you click on it, and it's a naked dude, standing like this with a sign that says good morning or something. You're like, why was I stupid enough
to
click
in the
link?
kitchen or something? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Scary. But I just, it was one of those things when I really read it, and then I thought about it, and it kind of set in, and it made me realize, I agree with Paul. There is a feeling of loss, and there is that equating, because I think when someone is that good of a leader and makes you believe in things and makes you think that things will be okay, you hear, you see him talk to the players, you hear when something major happens at the club, and you just know you're in good hands. You can get through anything. And I think when you have the idea that a person of that stature is going to leave, things aren't going to get better. It might be different. There might be immediate results. Someone might come in and win something massive immediately, and we might be like, wow, this is really cool and fun and different. But it won't be the same. And I think it's become so normal because he was really, really normal and basic and comfortable. And it just, the got us comment by Brian is really a good one, because, when I got into this sport, it was because it was something new for me to learn and a cultural change from watching American sports. And I read books about what it was like in the 70s and 80s. And then I feel like I got to witness that in the 2018s to 2024 by watching a manager treat kids in the neighborhood like they were his own. And it just, I don't know if we'll ever have another manager like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, personality-wise, right? I mean, when I saw it, I was up in the crack of dawn, beating up on some kids probably on FIFA, because I was it was way early, even early, way early, not just early for me kind of a thing. And
he hadn't gone to bed, people. He hadn't gone to bed.
So I look and
That's the only kind of early he knows.
No, man, it was like really like 4:35 and stuff. We're talking really early, like early for everybody, not just me, kind of thing. But I saw it on the feed, and honestly, my initial reaction was, "It is early. I haven't slept much." I was like, "What is the date?" Because it seemed like a cheesy, kind of like what you're saying, Gally, but it seemed like a cheesy April 1st kind of a stupid, like Mbappe signs for 20 years or something like that. That you would be like, "Oh, April 1st, we get it." And my literally initial reaction was like, "What is the date?" And then I was like, "Wait." The kids I beat up on FIFA can't wait. So I went on to YouTube and I watched the interview because initial reaction is like, why? Everything is going so good now. We could have maybe understood if this was last year. We talked about on the Monday podcast ourselves that he doesn't look like he has the same kind of energy. He looks like a guy that was almost like semi-defeated, tired, whatever, like especially maybe not this time last year, but definitely like the end of 2022. And I'm like, why now kind of thing. And I listened to that. I watched the entire interview. And I was like, I get it. Like when I watched that interview, I was like, I get it. And I told the story in the morning as well. I mean, I'm sure like Bickler can relate to it. Actually, Gally, you probably too, because I know your kind of like line of business goes in cycles too. But way back in the day, freaking decades ago, like I used to work retail and I was a hardware manager. And it was like, we were also the seasonal department. So, it's kind of like a constant cycle, summer, winter, Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And I really loved it, enjoyed it because of that change. It was constantly changing. And I maybe never even thought about that, I was kind of sick of it or I needed something else now or anything like that. But I remember this very significant moment of like standing by my desk and I see like a forklift going in the background carrying patio furniture. And I was like, yeah, I'm done with this shit. And like it was just like all that, I guess, built up stuff I didn't notice, but I was like, yeah, it's time for something new. I'm done with this shit. Like I'm not going through this full cycle again. And watching that interview, I just almost envisioned him in his office looking at like the off-season travel plans and transfer stuff. I'd be like, yeah, I'm done. Like I just don't have the energy to do it again. Because what makes him special to me, and I know like we kind of get connected to our managers and stuff like that, coaches of our teams, especially when they're successful. But aside from like his manager and how he manages a team and he can get in the city, when you listen to the dude, I'm not a religious person and he is, but his takes, even with religion and world politics and stuff like that, I could not be more aligned with. And how he like sees things, how he expresses things, how he views life and stuff like that. I just felt like, there was like, I connected to the dude in that sense. So when I watched the interview, I was like, you know what, man, I get it. Good luck to you. You deserve it. And I'm glad, I guess, the fact that he's going out on a high, because we were talking about it before we went online, Gally. I think if this happened when we were saying he looked tired and stuff like that, even at the end of last season, we would be almost like his shelf life expired. We even talked about it, like how much he stayed in dormant, his minds and stuff like that. And I think we would have probably said his shelf life was expiring anyway. Whereas now we're like, man, it was a whole new beginning. We put a new sticker on the shelf life kind of thing, and we could have kept going. And that's why I think the biggest sadness comes from.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is when you listen to the man speak, and I think Michael Martin is talking about it in his comment on the screen right now. When you listen to the man speak in this interview, you hear a man who is explaining his actions. Yep. And he almost describes it. I mean, he doesn't say he saw a forklift with some patio furniture, but he basically says something very similar. He's talking.
I saw Thiago out there kicking it around.
Well, no, he
back from injury.
Right. He thought about dealing with Thiago for another summer. And but no, he basically said like they were having a meeting like in what was it, November?
Yep.
And they were talking about next year's transfer plans. And like that's how far and forward they're already thinking about all opportunities at this club. And it probably was not only transfer plans, it was probably, hey, we're going on an American tour and we're doing this and we're gonna and he literally was like, I don't know that I can see myself doing this job in November or in next summer. And if in November you already can't see yourself doing it, he knows he can't do it.
Yeah.
And it was like that moment. And he said, you know what, I'm done. And I think it's very similar to how he left Dortmund. I genuinely believe he signed that extension a couple of years ago because he thought it was going to take longer to turn things around to the point where he feels the club is in now, so he could leave. And I think he wasn't going to leave this thing in transition. He was going to transition it. And maybe COVID and the club's finances and decision-making and guys that were available and his own stubbornness, like maybe that had something to do with not turning over the team faster. But I think it shocked all of us when he signed that last contract extension.
Yeah, true.
And I think this was him saying, I signed that extension to show you I was dedicated. I got you back to where I think you need to be. You need to go figure it out from here. And I think the club then said, then tell the rest of your backroom staff, none of them are getting the job either. And we're going in a totally new direction and everyone should be clear. And I think that's where they all kind of agreed that they'll all separate at the end of the year. And I think the players have known for a little bit. Some people think the players found out on Friday. I feel like they've known for a little bit. Now they just have to talk about it. Because it feels to me like they've been kind of all in it. We all said they had a little info in them that we didn't feel like they knew why they were playing so well and playing every game like cup finals, even random ass Tuesday afternoons in the Europa League. And I think they knew this guy was leaving and they're trying to win everything to make sure they win as much as they can before he goes.
Yeah, I mean,
I could be totally wrong, by the way.
He looked at those, like, you know, all the off-season plans and were like, I can't do this again. And he probably saw he was coming to the U.S. He's like, is Bickler going to be there? Fuck that. I'm out of here kind of thing. But, I mean,
he was afraid of that. He was afraid of he was afraid of being accosted by that guy from Indianapolis with the cell phone. That's what he was most afraid of. Okay, people? That thing has been shown more than naked pictures of like Marilyn Monroe from the 60s. Let me tell you, everywhere it goes. Have you seen my selfie? That's what he was afraid of. There's probably like a Ronaldo like escape plan for the United States for Jurgen Klopp if he has to come back because of that. I mean, come on.
But he makes that decision and he says, and I kind of respect that, like you say, he's leaving it on a high. But I mean, do you think, Bickler, then this is more of like an accumulation in terms of he was already like beat down and tired of all the battles along the way? I mean, obviously, it's all body blows, right? When you're working in a job like this, it's not a knockout punch. It's like you take a bunch of body blows and eventually it just becomes too much kind of a thing. Do you think that's what it is? Or did he really like wanted to kind of get it on the right track? Or even if it wasn't on the right track, he was going to do this anyway because he just does not have the energy.
I don't know if it was as well thought out. Like, I really think that Jurgen is like, he's this interesting balance of intellect and emotion. And I think he does really roll like on an emotional level. And so I think that when he did sign that extension, he just wasn't ready to be done. Like, I don't think it was like, I'm exhausted, I want to be done, but I'm not going to leave because I don't think the timing's right. I think he felt like he had more in the tank. And I think I still think he's got more in the tank, but I think like when you look at the side and you look at where everything's at, like for me, I don't know about you guys, but when you make a big life change and you transition into a big part of your life and like work is one of those, like I feel like you want there to feel like there's natural closure, right? And I feel like going into this side with like a huge change in the leadership exiting last summer and the squad refreshing the way it has, I really think the foundation has been kind of laid for that next iteration of this side. And I think it was just the timing is just too good. And you know, it is a natural closure of a chapter, considering the timing. So I think it's just one of those things where he knew he was ready and the timing was right.
And yeah, I mean, you got to kind of respect that. Nobody knows you better than you kind of an ordeal. I mean, I don't know, like, I don't want to get into the whole FSG thing because I feel like this is just like a really, no offense, Saito, but it's like a really lazy take. And it's another way
Even if we did, we could do a whole show on it.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's just kind of like opens the door.
You know what? Do you know what? Unhappy managers that don't feel supported, don't sign 3 contract extensions. They just don't. And that doesn't make any sense. No matter how you want to try to shape that narrative, it doesn't make sense.
If anything, if there's anything financial involved, and I was talking about this morning, he could feel that the sport is changing. It's just not I mean, this sport is changing. I mean, we've been, 2-3 years ago, the Super League thing was like, that's crazy. But now everybody's like, oh, maybe it's coming. Maybe it'll be like this. Maybe it will like that. I think the sport itself is changing, and maybe he's not liking. I brought up the example of like Saban this morning with like college. I mean, college football is not the same thing. That was pretty much like a semi-pro thing that's become in the U.S. And I can understand why a coach, for example, like Saban, who maybe made a career of sitting in living rooms and saying like, give me your kid, I'll make him a man, I'll make him go to the NFL, blah, blah, blah. That shit doesn't work anymore, because if you don't play him and discipline the kids, he just hits the portal and goes somewhere else. So I can understand maybe Gally, without going into because like I say, it will take hours if you get into the FSG conversation, but maybe the sport itself changing overall, kind of yet another body blow.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about it last week, and we're not going to talk about transfers. We have a match to review and 2 matches to preview before next Monday. But, I mean, there's been no money spent in England for a reason, people. They're actually a little bit afraid of these financial restrictions being brought down on these clubs. And you know what we have? No worry about anything we want to buy. You know why? We have one of the only self-sustaining clubs in all the world that competes on any front for honors. We sign what players we want when we want them. We get what managers we want. The owners sign the players they want. And we have the best youth players coming up out of our academy because we invested in it over a decade ago with these cheap pricks from the United States. But it's not tonight's topic. But really, that's why we're in a good place. And I think that's why Klopp was happy to be here. It's the opposite of why people think he's leaving. But we'll talk about that all at different times. But maybe we can talk now about those great players from yesterday or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to get to, actually, because it's kind of like lays the groundwork that the future looks pretty darn bright. But that kind of like brings me to the game from yesterday. Feels like it was a long time ago. It was a long day yesterday of stressful sports watching. But it was yesterday. So let's talk about that. You see a lot of those young kids out there, Bickler. How many of those guys can you comfortably right now perhaps pencil in? We're talking about like they're already talking about transfers and probably looking into who we can add and stuff like that. And Jamie says you have a Guinness class, top of the league, quadruple is on happy days. But how many of those players do you think from yesterday?
And they say that I'm not teachable. I take instruction.
No, I still stand by that unteachable thing. But let's go to the squad. I mean, Bradley, Kwanzaa, McConnell, and stuff like that. How many of those players do you think you can pencil in comfortably as in your like depth charts, if you will, for next season as you make squad plans?
I'm not convinced that we're going to see the likes of Clark and Beck yet, like regularly.
Well, that's a good thing because Beck has gone back on loan.
This just in from Cersei. He's back on the average. But no, I mean, in terms of like Bradley, Kwanzaa.
Let's stand by that comment.
He is teachable.
I'm going to double down on it.
Like Bradley, for example, I guess the big one, right?
Yes, Bradley for sure.
Ramsey today, for example. Do you pencil him as right back? We don't need depth there. We're done.
Dude, I'm like, you don't have to talk me into Bradley at right back. If it were me, he'd be forcing Trent to win his job back, to be quite honest. I know it's early days, but Bradley has played his pants off for 2 straight starts and has been on fire. And I would keep rolling with that kid while you got it. Yes, I think Bradley will be there. I think Kwanzaa will be there, if for nothing else than the fact that we have a constant center back crisis. And I mean, I think I don't know that we'll regularly see McConnell. Great debut, by the way. Excellent. Yeah. I just don't. You just don't know with these kids, right? I mean, just because they're getting minutes and opportunities now, I think it is an indication of how highly they are thought of at the club, but I don't think it's any indication of how regularly you're going to see them next year. Outside of the ones that are like outside of the players that are filling in for players that are injured. Like I think there's a difference there.
Yeah, I agree with those names. I guess to play the devil's advocate though, Gally, we pretty much said the same about Nico a lot. What do you think makes like Bradley better or more long-term than Nico?
Well, I mean, first thing is I've seen more in 2 matches out of Bradley than I saw in Nico's 8 to 11 years at the club. And that includes some really good performances, but a lot of it was like a flash where we'd be like, oh, he kind of looks like Trent in this way. Like I saw Bradley do things I haven't seen Trent do in a while in the last few matches. I saw Bradley show like defend. I saw Bradley show confidence in 1-2s with players he's probably barely ever been on a pitch outside of a few training sessions with. I think he has a lot of confidence in his game. I don't want to get into this whole thing with like, oh, they're trying to find a replacement for Trent so they can sell him. Like, this is where people are going. Like, I saw people today actually saying Trent should move to right wing during this time that Mo's out. I'm like, this is just
listen. He's either getting sold or he's winning the Balloon d'Or in midfield. All right, come on.
It doesn't
Stop
matter
sitting on the fence, Gally.
And both of those are wrong answers. He's the right back at the club, and I think that we have a really good backup now. I think Bradley finds himself with the role, and I think Ramsey hopefully does enough on loan wherever he went today, Bolton, I think, and hopefully he does enough to be able to sell him for a small profit and just move on from a kid who's never going to make a senior appearance at a club. But if you ask me the kid who I think is actually going to surprise, and I know we used a lot of poking fun at him, I think the one who's actually been out on loan and the only one who's succeeding at a high level at his club is actually Tyler Morton, who's actually kicked on and looks like he might be like I think he has a real chance to come back next year and potentially take down a spot, not as a starter, but as like a squad player in this side. I mean, he's got, I think it was 8 goals and 6 assists playing basically the 8 for Hull. And he's been their best player up to this point all season long. He's had a really big year. Like, I think there's other players within the system. I just think it proves that they're just churning out talent that they're going to continue to be able to sell for profit and continue to be able to supplement the first team. And I think it's just, it's an enormous model. People in the chat will call it cheap by ownership. And I'd say it's how you sustain without being able to overspend as a club of our size.
And I mean, not only that, I think spend in a way, I mean, spend for a player that you really need and you can focus on that player and, you know, get the guy that you really want for the position you need. If you can kind of like find, so you don't have to go out. I mean, we're talking about it this morning with Mateusz as well. Like, instead of, you know, you can go out and spend 60 on Szoboszlai because you have your backup right back figured out, instead of trying to buy one for 20 and then now you only have 40 for the other guy and you can't afford a Dominic Szoboszlai or stuff like that. So it opens those possibilities. Having said that, though, actually, Bickler, does this also, like Klopp leaving, new manager coming in, kind of like opens up a new slate and clean slate maybe for players like for example, Carvalho and people we said in the past just does not fit the system. So the new system might be appealing to these guys. And we said the same thing about Nunez and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of players that, you know, we've talked about being more natural fits for 4-2-3-1s or variants of other formations. And so like that all comes into play, right? I mean, when Klopp walks out, that is all up in the air. There are going to be a lot of balls up in the air. It's going to be very interesting to see where those things land, especially for players like Carvalho who have been fringe players, especially for big name, big money players like Nunez, who we don't really know like where his natural position is. We just know that he creates opportunities and he scores. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of those things are going to be up in the air. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what happons here, depending on who comes in.
And I know, like, there was like a whole hoopla about, you know, like what Van Dijk said today, and I'm assuming, you know,
non-story
totally makes sense that what he says. And like, I mean, if it was somebody who does not, you know, who plays midfield or a specific type of 6, specific type of 8, I can see something like that. But I don't think there's a manager or there's a system in the world that does not have a place for one of the world's best center backs. So I don't think anybody's going to like, he's not really my kind of center back kind of a thing. I don't think there's a manager like that out there. But so looking at that Norwich game, I mean, it was kind of like really easy, smooth watching. And it was probably the ideal case scenario, Gally, where you were able to play a lot of the young kids. You were able to bring in the dudes from the starting 11, who are coming back from injury and stuff like that. It's almost like you couldn't have drawn it out any better. Having said that, what does that tell you about Wednesday and Sunday's games in terms of who we should expect to see, especially out of those guys that just came back, Robertson, Trent, Szoboszlai?
I think we will see a couple of them against Chelsea. I'm not guaranteeing that we see Szoboszlai against Chelsea from the start or Robertson. I think you'll see Trent. I know Paul's like, you got to start Bradley. I think Bradley might maybe start the match against Arsenal, or maybe he doesn't start either of them, unfortunately for him, and he gets, a run out to close out the match. And why not bring your better right back defender in to finish out a match, hopefully with a lead. And knowing that you're not losing anything going forward and what he gives you in his interplay with the offense. I think that you're going to see a midfield of, if McAllister is fit to play, I think Chelsea's midfield will, maybe you will have Szoboszlai in there now that I think of who's available, but it's probably Jones, Szoboszlai, and McAllister if they're fit at this point. I could see, we don't love the Elliott and, the Harvey and Jones together, but I could see that potentially with him not playing at all in the League Cup game against Norwich and being rested. I think that you're going to have some rotation over these matches. You have to. I mean, it's a quick turnaround, and these are guys that are coming back from injury. And I think Gomez played too well to not start him at left back against Chelsea, but I could be totally wrong. This is Klopp. He'll probably go right back to Trent and Rabo and be like, these are my fullbacks. They play when they're fit.
Yeah, what do you think, Bickler? I mean, I think those two are probably the biggest questions. And knowing and how much of a factor is it the fact that we're playing Arsenal next on Sunday?
It'll factor in a little bit. I don't know how much you can control that because, I don't think you can. I don't know that you want to. I don't know if you want to go in too weak versus Chelsea either, and I don't know how much weaker you can go in versus Chelsea, to be quite honest. I mean, the fact of the matter is when you've got basically you've got 5-point gap with one game in hand, you can't really afford to start making concessions on lineups versus teams like Chelsea, no matter how up and down they are. So I think it'll be pretty strong. I agree with Gally. As much as I like Bradley and what he's done, I think if Trent's available, he's going to play, right? And he's going to play at fullback. So I think Trent will be there. I agree with Gomez. I think, I don't know. I know where Robertson is from a fitness standpoint is the thing. And so, maybe he plugs and goes, but I think you've got to, I think you've got to play Gomez in one of the two. And so maybe you play him in Arsenal, right? And you say you'd rather have Gomez for Arsenal, and then you give Robbo the Chelsea start. So one of those things is going to happen. I'm not sure which. I think the midfield, I'm probably Jones, McAllister, although you're going to have McAllister versus Arsenal. So I think you're going to see some early subs in this match regardless, just because you're going to have some sort of rotation because the depth isn't there, right? So let's see, Chelsea. I could kind of see the Jones and Harvey tandem in this game. I know we hate it, but I could see it, and I think it actually matches up pretty well with that lineup, considering that they just put what's his name now? I'm totally blank. Gallagher right in the middle of that pitch. So I think that probably slots in well for both of those guys to play in, and then I think that's probably what I would see. And then you've got, I think up top you've got to go Nunez, Jota, Diaz. You got to. I don't know where else you go from there, And I think I don't know. I guess you got to play Diaz. The problem with this side, and it's the same problem it's always been, is I don't know where you get a naturally right-sided attacker, right? I think we've out of all these players, the one that's played the best as a right-sided attacker is Gakpo. And that's you don't want him there either. But Diaz gets lost over there. Nunez, forget about it. Jota sometimes does okay over there, but the fact of the matter is there's nobody that you have right who isn't better on the left or central. And that's the problem, right? So who are you handcuffing over there? It's just such a weird issue with this squad.
Would have been a great opportunity for Ox if it was here
right.
To play
Exactly.
On the right side. But I mean, honestly, I found it interesting, by the way, that and we had that quote actually shared on our social media, I think a few days ago, that Gakpo actually prefers and would rather play on left wing. So he does prefer the wing. I thought based on his style, he would have actually liked being in the middle a bit more, where he can.
He said that coming in that he preferred the left.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess you can put him in the wing there. One guy that I wanted to ask you guys, because obviously, based on the selections over here, I'm assuming still not in high rating, is Gravenberch. What do you make of his game, Gally, and like how or where or if does he fit?
I was about to say earlier, I was going to jump in when we were talking, and Paul randled off every midfielder that might play this weekend. I was actually going to say I would be more comfortable playing McConnell than starting Gravenberch, because I thought when Gravenberch scored the goal and did the celebration, and I was happy for him. It was a great ball by Bradley to kick the ball into the ground, and he just got his forehead in the way and it went in. I thought it was arguably like the exclamation point on one of the worst 90-minute performances I've seen. I thought Gravenberch was one of the worst players on the pitch against Norwich. I thought he was lost almost all match long. He turned the ball over.
You mean like out of our players, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, out of our players. Like, I just felt like it almost felt like this was a match where everything worked for us except for Ryan Gravenberch. He looked like a fish out of water at times. He plays soft. Like he's got this strapping body. He gets knocked off the ball by players that feel like they're like smaller than me. Yeah. Like he just looks like he's thinking all the time, and maybe he just hasn't picked up the tactics yet, or he's still carrying the heavy price tag. I know there's a player in there, and I understand there's a lot of talent, and you can see it at times. He glides on the pitch, but he does that for 3.5, 4 minutes a match. And I feel like he just disappears the entire rest of the time. And it just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe it's the tactics, maybe it's formation, maybe it's his fit. But again, this, he's got a little Renato Sancho in him. Like, everybody loves to tell you how good a player Renato Sanchez is and how great he's going to be. And then he gets to your club and you see like a month or two and you're like, wait, this is a guy on his second massive club, and both clubs are basically asking the exact same question. What does he do and where does he fit in? And the answer is not well and not enough.
And that's the thing. I thought, when I saw the goal and I was like, wait, okay, maybe like these are things maybe he needs. And I think maybe Bickler that there are so many other options that he does not, and he's not going to get as many opportunities as he normally would have perhaps. But do you think, like, is it just a matter of like him not valuing position? I mean, you comparing, like Saido's comparing him to Jones. I would not even put him on the same RCM, LCM. I'd rather put Jones as a right midfielder ahead of Gravenberch if I have to, mainly due to the value of possession that you get from Jones that you do not get from Gravenberch. He just does some things that seem like he's off script, if that makes sense.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I think, look, I think it's really, I think the conversation on Gravenberch is kind of harsh. Has he been poor for a while? Yes. But I think we're also conveniently forgetting some of these conversations we had where we thought we had one of the gems of the summer window, one of the steals of the summer window. And this is after we'd seen performances from him, right? So, like, let's not forget his start with the club, which was pretty tasty. So, like, that being said, I got to think that some of this is mental, right? Which is, like, hand up, that's accountability on his part, right? Like, he's got to learn as a player maturing how to put his hand up, admit when he's struggling, and find what he needs to do to get back into a routine where he can kind of build up some of that self-confidence and get his game back to where it needs to be. Part of that, I think, is going to be from the fact that, like, I feel like his minutes, he's gotten minutes, but I don't think they've come with regularity. And I also don't feel like they've come with any sort of, like, pre-planning. Like, I feel like his minutes have been really reactionary minutes, which I think are completely different than when you have a planned strategy to bleed player minutes in. especially on a young player. So like I think part of it is like I think part of it's on the club and on Jurgen Klopp to hold the hand up and take some responsibility for being able to bet a young player in and settle him in. I think we do need to remember like some perspective that this kid came in with, in that he did light it up when he came in. So we know it's there. But yeah, like there is no excuse for a player his size to get moved off the ball and on the near post on a header and get scored on. Like he's been a turnover machine in midfield. And we're talking, this is the other thing that makes me think it's mental. It's not just like the fact that he's being out fought for stuff. It's the fact that he's making mistakes that you're taught in like grade school not to make. Like turning the ball into the center of the pitch in dangerous areas. Like he's forgetting like simple things that are basically drilled into your brain at a really young age about, turning ball side, like just very, very simple things that like it's weird to see a player not do, and frankly terrifying when he's on your team, right? So I think we need to give him a little bit. Let's see what happens here, but yeah, he's definitely one that's got to feel some heat here, and he's definitely an underperforming piece. I still think he can't have a future at this club, but we got to figure it out. Because like here's the thing, Jurgen's here for what, and then what? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's too early to judge him as a player or anything like that. It's more about, I mean, I always say like he's the guy that gets on the elevator right when the door is closing when he came into the transfer market. So he hasn't had a preseason, and he hasn't had like, they don't obviously practice as much as normal, especially with this like schedule where they play every 3 days and stuff like that. And he will get his opportunities. It's just hard to find the fit for him right now, Gally, because it almost feels like he knows and he's trying hard, but his trying harder is he's almost trying to get out of the funk with finesse, as opposed to, some players will. I mean, that's what Szoboszlai did when he first came in, right? Ran his ass off, and that kind of like got him into the groove that way. It almost feels like Gravenberch is trying to do it with finesse and gliding through to get over the hump, as opposed to kind of like grinding through, winning some balls and like putting in some tackles and stuff.
I think it's completely what's happening, and I think he is trying to figure out his way to do it, and it feels like he's trying to do it through highlight reel plays and shots from outside the box, and I think that's what leads to bad turnovers and bad spots, and that's what supporters remember. And you know how we know this? Because that's how we talked about Curtis Jones 2.5 seasons ago,
exactly.
When he played exactly like Gravenberch is playing right now. But we were patient with Curtis Jones, and whether Saidu likes it or not, he's turned out to be our most consistent and overall best midfielder at the club, who makes the best runs forward and actually has the best eye for goal, which is how he got himself into position to score the opening goal in that match, which was a class header by a midfielder who drifted into the box and positioned his body like a striker to score a goal that was perfectly put on him by McConnell. But like, that's what he does. And then he created a goal later in the match. I mean, it wouldn't be the day I'd be jumping into the comments to talk trash about Curtis Jones, because he was right up there. If Bradley wasn't as good as he was, Curtis Jones would have taken himself home another man of the match trophy.
And honestly, yeah, it's not like Gravenberch, like you said. I think maybe off the players on the pitch, probably you would, if you gave ratings out, he was probably the lowest. He did not have a terrible game, but next to Jones and McConnell, who. That's the only thing that kid has to learn, because that kid is like a walk-in red card in the Premier League, the way he bowls and like goes into tackles and stuff like that. But that will kind of get out of it. It almost feels like Thiago a little bit, where he's just like, stand up, kids. Yeah, that guy that supposedly comes, and he's gonna be back too. I can't wait to try to work him into the equation. So 2 games coming up: Chelsea first, and then Arsenal away. If I give you 4 points right now, Bickler, are you taking and running with it?
Yes.
Okay. Does it matter where the points are coming from? Where the 1 and 3 are coming from?
Nope.
No. Okay. Gally, I give you 4 points. Are you taking and running with it?
Yes. But I really think if we want to win the league, we need all 6 points from the remainder of this week. I genuinely believe that in my heart. I think we have to keep putting pressure on City. We need to keep a short to small lead ahead of them. And I also think we need to separate ourselves from Arsenal's just more than anything to almost put them out of it in their own mind. Because I just think it's more important that it just comes down to us and City, but we'll see where that goes from there.
So let me guys ask you this, because Matush made like the bold statement of the morning over here. Let's say, what do you put our title chances percentage wise right now? And where would you put it if we do get 6 out of these next 2 games? Bickler. Because Brian Sheldon says we need all 6 points. I mean, yeah, I would love all 6 points, but I'm not going to be shattered, I think. Especially if you beat Chelsea and if you come back with a point from Emirates, I'm not going to be depressed about it. I mean, disappointed maybe, but not depressed. Back to the percentages, Bickler. Shoot us some numbers.
Okay, so my head says like 66%, and my heart says like 80%.
Right now.
Yeah. Yep.
Before the 6 points. So after 6 points, those numbers become?
I would go like I don't think 2 points makes a huge, massive difference in the scope of the entire season because of all the things that can and can't happen. I probably go like 60-80 or like 70-85. But like I think I'm torn because I think like this side just feels like it has that thing. It feels like it has just that never like I feel like we're getting 3 points when things are against us, when we get every bad bounce, when we don't deserve to be in the match, when we haven't played great and we've been outplayed, we're finding ways to get 3 points. And that's what title winners do. It's never as dominant feeling as that 2021 team, but it feels like that same, it just has that same energy about it. I can't really put that into words.
Jelly.
I'm not that boisterous because history has proven to me what City does, literally by basically going on runs from like February to May every year. I feel it's like a 50-50, maybe 55-45 right now, today. If you tell me we get these 6 points, I'd probably move that up to like 60% we win it, 40% we get pipped.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of like in the middle, I think. I'd probably put us at like 55-60 right now. But really, if we get 6 points out of these 2 fixtures, I would raise that up to like 70 or so. And I think the only thing that worries us probably is the fact that it is City. If it was Arsenal we were going against, I would have put those numbers a lot higher. But I feel like it's 2 very tough fixtures, regardless of how Chelsea is. I mean, the players they have are capable of certain things. And obviously, we know Arsenal. So I would definitely... I mean, I understand where, like Alan says, we have to aim for 6 points. I think if you don't aim for... You don't go any game aiming for 1 because, if you aim for a draw, you're probably getting a loss anyway with that mindset. But I'm talking about in terms of how we would take the results. Go ahead, Gal. You were about to say something.
I was just going to say championship teams don't drop points to teams like Chelsea at home. And I understand like they're Chelsea and it's a big match and they play us differently. They're not in a good place. They've been taken to, they've lost to Luton. They've lost some matches that are just abysmal. They're at times dysfunctional. I know they've played a little better of late, but we should be able to get at a Chelsea side that's trying to figure themselves out, that doesn't have their best 11 and hasn't figured out their best way. And I think that you're playing Chelsea at home in your first Premier League match at home after this Klopp announcement. Like, you show up Wednesday, you get championship sides get those 3 points. And I think if they get those 3 points, you have all that confidence to go into the Arsenal match thinking to yourselves, we lay a marker down today on the road in London. And I think like that's, to Paul's point, I feel like that's what's happening here is I think this is like the galvanizing of this side. They're either going to pick up this momentum from Klopp's announcement and they're going to like roll with it and hold it like a badge of honor, or it's going to weigh on them. So far, in my opinion, the way they've handled the media, the way they've handled their availability, it all sounds like they're ready for this and they're embracing it. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes because this is going to be a lot, man. They basically changed the whole entire story every day until May 22nd when they play when the final whistle of the Wolves game happens. It is all about Jurgen Klopp, and I know that's not what Klopp wanted, and we'll talk about why this happened on a different pod. But I do think it's on the players now to step up and take this momentum forward because they're the only ones who can do it. All Klopp can do is say funny things in press conferences and ask supporters not to sing songs that they're just going to sing even more if you keep asking them. Note to Klopp, stop talking about the supporters singing your song. They might sing it less.
Yes, I mean, he's talked stuff into existence, like the early morning games and stuff like that. But so that's a good point, by the way, Bickler. Like, how do you think the team reacts? I mean, I just don't see the Norwich game, for example, as a good barometer of how the team will react. I think even because especially since they had all the kids too, those kids were going to give it all. But especially the senior players, how do you think they react? Is there any let's send this guy off on a good note, or doesn't matter who the guy is, we got to win anyway because we're competitors?
Well, I mean, they're certainly going to play harder, right? Like, they're not going to play. I don't think they're going to play like not as hard because he's not going to be back. But I think this goes back to something Gally said at the beginning of the pod. I think this side's known for a little bit, and I think that's why this side feels like it has a little bit of magic this year. Like, we go back and look at how this team, when they were trying to figure out its midfield, when they were going through weird injury crises, when they had like a lot of these kind of disruptions in the squad, we were still grinding out these results out of nothing with new players. And it just the team's different, but the magic's the same from that 2021 run. I just strongly believe that, like, I do believe that they've known for a little bit. And I do believe that I think what we're feeling out of the squad is the reaction to that. So yeah, I definitely think there's a reaction. I think it's a positive one for the side.
Do you think, like, Gally, like they, he might have maybe told the captains or hinted it? I mean, is it one of those things where they kind of see the writing on the wall? Like, we don't know for sure, we can't see it, but we know there's a pot of chili simmering in the background behind that black wall that Bickler has in that kitchen right now. So is it like that where we know, even though we can't see it, we kind of like know it, get a sense of it? Or you think he pretty much told the big boys at least to, hey, let's make me go on a high note over here?
Changes the whole definition to the writing is on the wall. It is through the wall,
behind the wall,
over the left-hand shoulder.
It's graffitied on the back wall, behind this wall.
Yeah, it's graffitied on the back wall. It's just Chef Boyardee simmering in a pot. But
with Bamford,
that's rude, by the way. I respect Bickler to know he can make his own chili and not open up a freaking.
It's a good point. It's not Chef Boyardee. It's probably some ramen noodle because we're on a budget on Monday.
Listen, guys, I spent 20 years in food retail. I know my way around the kitchen. All right, that's why Bamford hangs out at this house.
We just know you don't know your way to the kitchen because you knocked down everything on your way.
Listen, just because
the kitchen, yeah.
Just because stuff doesn't get plated on actual dishware doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing around here.
That is true. It is fine dining. It's just served out of a 3/4 quart saucepan.
Sorry for trying to be efficient. Jesus.
Direct from pot to mouth. Yeah. Go ahead, Gal.
Whoa. I don't even know where to go with that. It's too late in this podcast for pot to mouth talk.
No, let's just let that float. Yeah.
No, we'll let that simmer. Sorry. I knew that was the way to end this.
How does Gally have better dad jokes than me and Tim? It doesn't make any sense.
I do want to make that clear. There's a guarantee, people. That the word simmer will be in the podcast title. There's a guarantee.
I swear to God, if you make another dad joke, Kelly's ovaries in the other room are gonna start turning over.
They will explode. They will.
Kelly is running those DNA tests in the background to see if actually he has a couple of kids somewhere.
Jesus Christ.
You know what, man? Now you went too far. We
brought Kelly's ovaries into it. That was the line.
Correct. It got so off the rails. I have no idea what the question was or where we were going. To be totally honest.
Dude,
we're an hour in the kitchen was the question.
This happened 57 minutes later than I thought it would. So I mean,
hey,
yeah, we did well.
Okay, score predictions then. Let's go with that since we've hit the hour mark over here. And that before that thing comes to a boil in the background, let's just get some scores. Chelsea, Arsenal. Gally, go.
Chelsea, Arsenal. I don't know when they play.
That's gonna be
Liverpool
March
versus Chelsea. Liverpool versus Chelsea. I will go. I'm going to go with the Timuchin special and say it's a 3-1 home victory. And I am going to call for the 6-point win. We go to the Emirates and we win 2-1.
Damn, man, you stole my thunder there. Bickler.
2-0 Chelsea, and I will go 2-1 Arsenal. Like we win at Arsenal, not Arsenal.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I saw the concern.
Yeah, you were like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Actually, you said 2-0 Chelsea and 2-1 Arsenal. I was like, did Bickler just predict we get 0 points?
No,
What just
I
happened?
guess I just assumed that we were talking Wednesday. Sorry, guys.
I'll go with the Timuchin special for the Chelsea game. I'm thinking a 3-2 win at Arsenal. The crazy game that did not happen at Anfield, I kind of predict over there. But yeah, I mean, 6 points would be freaking huge, man. Like I say, it would kind of like get us on the highway to the title, and I would love to see that. And hopefully the boys respond well. It's going to be an interesting week. It's going to be an interesting few months over here, but definitely start with this week over here. And then obviously come March, the schedule gets even weirder. But that's it for us this week. As always, like, subscribe, and hit all those buttons. And as Bickler would say, where is that sample?
Like and subscribe. Smash that like button. Like and subscribe. Smash that like button.
And as Gally says, this does sound a lot better without the video. So we'll go with that. Have an awesome week, everybody. We'll see you guys next week, hopefully talking about these 6 points and what they mean.